the new impossible challenge is Omicron is raging. We've shown the charts, we'll show it again. And the Republicans are more than 3 times more unvaccinated than the Democrats. And if more people being unvaccinated is leading to way more disease, and Omicron is completely out of control. And just today, Nina, on Twitter, Congratulations Joe was trending because it was a sarcastic thing that the right wing was doing. Ha ha, Joe Biden can't control coronavirus because we're so stupid, we're getting it all over ourselves. And so that's your fault, Joe Biden. Now, you and I have talked a lot about how Joe Biden does have a lot of responsibility in many different areas, but this one's not really on him. But somehow he has to get the numbers down when half the country says we're not going to cooperate. We're willing to risk our lives and then blame you for it. So if you were in his shoes, what in the world would you do?
Yeah, well, first of all, I would change the rhetoric around the virus and the pandemic itself. I wouldn't talk about it myself as the leader of the free world as a red or blue issue. Even though the data points that you certainly have laid out, we do know that in red states is worse. But I would just resist talking about it in that way, and talk about it from a position of something that President John F. Kennedy once said: "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." Now, you all want to talk about patriotism. Let's talk about patriotism. Let's get down deep into patriotism. Let's talk about it. That's number one. Number two, I would elicit and solicit the help from big mamas across this country from all walks of life. Because I do believe, because of the way that a certain set of Americans are wired, having the president of the United States pass down what they think is edicts automatically makes them resist. And so instead of being surrounded by other people with these fancy elected titles, no, I want big mama and big grandma and big daddy and big granddaddy on my side. I want auntie and uncles by my side to help me. And then I would get some retired Republicans and Democrats, because I do understand some people receive the message different. If we did have to get some people with some fancy titles once upon a time, who have seen the light and who would be willing to join forces with me, not to talk about this as a Republican or a Democrat, but to talk about this as the humanitarian crisis that it is. And then I would talk about the babies now, the children that are contracting this now, because it is so much more, that the crime is so much more susceptible to people getting it, that now hospitals are being filled now with more children than ever before because of this particular strain. So between big mama, big daddy, grandma, granddaddy, the babies, and then getting by with a little help from some of my friends who hold fancy titles, we would spread out all over this country. I would solicit the doctors and the nurses. Bring this down to the community level, Cenk. This is what is going to have to happen. And I damn sure would not allow the CDC director to push people back into work if they are infected with this disease. And I would stand up proud and strong and say, we will have, even for this moment, let me do an executive order. Let them sue me, whatever has to happen. But we're going to have some paid family and medical leave while this pandemic is going on.
Yep. Okay, so first of all, you're right. Biden does share some of the blame. It's not a majority, but he should at least do everything he can, and he hasn't. So that's the reference to the CDC now shortening the quarantine time from 10 days to 5 days because business interests asked them to, and that was brazen and it was obvious. And that's him responding to his donors, and that's unacceptable. We're progressives. We don't mind calling out Democrats at all for things they've actually done. But yes, the unvaccinated have led to the great majority of the problem. Now, Nina, my first instinct is to fight. Sometimes, funny enough, you talk me out of that. And this is one of those instances. And you're right. And I think the thing that you could do to build upon what you're saying, and it's interesting. Almost every time we do this segment, Nina, it comes back to media and the power of media and how Democrats don't use the power of media. So Dale Weeks died this week. He's from Iowa. I don't know what his politics are, but he had an infection. And he was rejected by almost all the hospitals in Iowa because all the beds were full, and they were full with unvaccinated patients who got coronavirus. And the infection lasted too long while he was waiting for hospitals. It's 17 hours of stomach surgery, and he didn't make it. He died. If he had gotten treated early, he definitely would have survived. Ray DeMania, same thing in Alabama. And you put up their pictures, you bring their family, and instead of being aggressive about it, which is my nature, and oftentimes Nina's nature, if you did what you're suggesting, Nina, I think you're right. It would be more effective if you said, guys, right wing, left wing, it doesn't matter. You don't want Dale and Ray to die, do you? You're decent human beings, right? You get that if the hospitals are full, they're not going to be able to treat them. And Ray DeMania had a heart condition, and he went through, I think, about 40 hospitals that wouldn't take him, and then he died because he wasn't being treated. You don't want to do that to them, do you? And try to find that humanity and try to connect them to people they can relate to, as opposed to the big bad libs who they want to own.
That's it. And we got to touch the heart, not the head. And I know it's a hard thing to do. And for some of us who understand why it is so important that we get the vaccine, sometimes we can't understand why some people won't do it. But Stephen Covey once said, seek first to understand and then to be understood. I know it can be an incredible ask from times, but this is one of those moments that we really do need to do everything that we can. And we know this top-down way is not working. And so we got to bring this to the grassroots. We got to get the nurses out there, firefighters out there, those professions that people really respect, and the community members and the community leaders that people absolutely respect to try to sway this thing the other way. We got to do it. And we got to do it. And then, Jim, what you said, it made me think about the fireside chats. I mean, why don't we take something that FDR did to really quell the fears of Americans during the Great Depression? And he let them know, baby, we're going to get out of this thing. This is a monster. This is a beast, but we're going to get out of this. Can you imagine if I were the president of the United States of America, we would be having fireside chats on a regular basis. I would go to every state in this nation on a regular basis. I would dispatch other people, and it don't have to be the people with the fancy titles. I want the people with the most important titles, and that's mama, that's daddy, that's grandmama, that's community leader, that's activist, that's a person that actually gives a shit. Those are the people that I would be side by side with, trying to increase the number of people who would be willing to get this daggone vaccine.
Yeah, no, again, two different things you just said that immediately resonate. First of all, I'm gonna ask the producers to bring back that graph of Omicron spreading wildly that we did from the earlier story. Because to Nina's point, first you gotta hit them with all angles. Some people look at this, and by the way, a lot of folks in power or a lot of folks in media make the mistake of assuming that everybody knows what they know. My guess is tons and tons, probably the great majority of the country has not seen this graph. And if I was Biden or anyone else, I would say, guys, you see that? This is the number of cases. It's not made up, it's real. You could go and ask your local hospital, your local doctors, etc. This thing is spiking. This thing is incredibly contagious. It's coming to your neighborhood. There's absolutely no question about it. Now, some people will not be moved by that, but some will. They might go, oh my God, I didn't know that. Jesus, I got to protect myself, right? And maybe they take ivermectin instead, I don't know, right? But at least for the people who will be affected by that, give them that. For the people who will be affected by doctors, show them doctors. But then for the people, which is a huge percentage of people that are affected more by human stories, do the fireside chats. That's a great idea. If you took Ray DeMania's or Dale Weeks' daughter, and Joe Biden did a fireside chat with them, and they had a picture of their dad up, and they told a story of how they couldn't get the care. Or like you said, Nina, there's 50 states. You could do it in DC, you could do it in their own states, and have somebody who was, either a family member that went through it or themselves that was unvaccinated, then got the disease and realized they were being lied to. Just the very act of seeing another human being tell you that instead of a government official or a guy in a lab coat might make a giant difference.
Yeah, it changes, and bringing in the doctors and the nurses. And you made me think of something else. Not only would I do those fireside chats across the country, but I would make sure that there were doctors and nurses right there, healthcare professionals ready at those events. We'll make it an event so that people could get vaccinated and tested on the spot. I would have the N95 mask on, right on the spot, and talk to people about not just this particular, but that this moment, that there is promise in the problem, gives us an extraordinary opportunity to do a new thing in the United States of America. And I am not going to stop until we tame this pandemic under my watch. And then, Cenk, something else that you said that kind of made me think, it's that graph is a good thing, but if we start showing it in bodies, real people, when we show bodies or images, 800,000 people dead in this country because of that. So let's put some flesh and blood behind this. Do y'all hear me now? Do you get this now? Do you know how important this is? What if it was your grandmother that was weeks and she couldn't get in? That's it. I mean, it's matters of the heart. We got to do this a different way. The way they're doing it right now is not working at all.
Yeah,
or not fast enough, I will say.
Yeah, no, look, I like to think that I ask really hard questions and what we need to do, and I know they're hard because I look at them and go, oh, I'm not sure. Right?
Oh, they're hard. They're very hard. Yeah. You're making me go deep.
And I'm a guy who's usually sure. So to give you a sense of that context, but I tell you, every week you come up with things where I go, wait a minute, why aren't they doing that? Isn't that unbelievable that Biden hasn't just sat down with family members one at a time and then publicized the hell out of it and said, look, this is what they went through, and try to connect on an emotional level. It's nuts that he hasn't done that.
That's right. Instead of having instead of the CDC putting out ads with a worker double mask saying, I'm not gonna let COVID-19 take my shift. What in the unholy hell?
Yeah, no, that's the exact wrong way to go about it. So we started out saying, look, it's not, or at least I started saying it's not that much Biden's fault, but you've not convinced me it's more his fault than I realized. It's still, yes, on you, take personal responsibility, get vaccinated, protect yourself and your family and your loved ones and your community. And no, I don't think the right wing has a right to complain after they don't get vaccinated. But yes, there is more you can do, and I wish they would do it.
Absolutely. There's some there's some left wingers too. I hate to say, there are people that just won't get vaccinated for whatever reason. So we got to do everything that we can. And I just refuse to believe that when you are the most powerful person in the free world, that there's not something that you cannot do. I mean, you just do it, sweating. I mean, just letting people know I'm in this. Even that would start to move people, I believe. But when you got your press secretary making fun of or dismissing, being very dismissive, I should say, against a reporter asking a legitimate question about testing, when you have this elitist attitude about how to deal with this, you get what you get. This is a grassroots, get down in the mud. This is take your tie off, take your suit off, put on the tennis shoes and get among the people kind of work, Cenk. This is grassroots work. This is missionary work.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.